I want you to imagine the following situation. The flat that you're in, or the house that you are living in, is fully paid off. You don't have to pay any more rent or any more mortgage. The power that you have in your house comes to you for free, or at a very minimal cost. Same with the heating. The food is grown outside, so you don't have to worry about where you're going to eat. And your children are taken care of by being educated in the house itself. Now, why am I leading you down this thought experiment given the title of the video? Well, something fairly simple, really, and that is that your house isn't actually made of money, which seems like, again, like a very obvious thing to observe, but I think it's necessary in order to ground people's expectations when they go out and earn money. Because, as St. Paul says, the love of money is the root of all evil. But that doesn't mean that money in itself is bad. Indeed, one of the reasons why we as Christians are allowed to own lots of stuff in practice is because when the Israelites left Egypt, they took the silver and gold with them. Material possessions aren't a bad thing. However, owning simply coins and money, this can be a serious delusion, because one of the things I think we tend to sometimes forget in our financial planning is that the money of itself doesn't actually have any function nowadays. You can't sit down and eat a £5 note. You can't take that $10 and use that to wash yourself. But of course what you do is that you have these and you spend them. Of course, very obvious, right? But this is what should really orient your financial planning. And that is not the acquisition of artificial wealth, which is what I've just described, or money, but natural wealth, which is what St. Thomas Aquinas uses to describe things such as food. Now, with that being said, this has some pretty serious impacts for sensible financial planning. Rather than going out into the city, going to San Francisco perhaps if you're in America to earn a very large salary, the question becomes rather, how can I provide the natural wealth necessary for the continued existence of myself and my family? And this is what the real question is. Because pursuing money beyond this is vanity. If there's no good reason for having the money, then why would you have it in the first place? The rest of it is often ego, and so we want to avoid this as Christians. So the question becomes, natural wealth. How do we acquire it? And this isn't necessarily through continually earning a salary. This can be done through, at one point, possessing sufficient artificial wealth to be able to purchase those pieces of natural wealth that aren't so inclined to decay. So, for instance, rather than paying money to an electricity provider every month, you buy a set of solar panels. Just to give an example, it may not necessarily be the best one. And so, when handling financial planning, remember this. One of the most important things for this, I think, particularly if you're able to travel internationally, is that different countries will have different costs for different things. So, for example, I live in the UK, and the UK is one of the most expensive countries on the planet. However, if I were to go to the middle of India, say into Hyderabad or to Kerala, it will probably be cheaper than in the UK. Likewise, if I were to go to Norway, it would be more expensive. And so positioning becomes important. Additionally, it's also worth considering whether or not your natural wealth, or those possessions that you have, are able to generate money in themselves, rather than having the artificial wealth go straight into the natural wealth and it just sort of remain standing by. Now, one way that this can be done very effectively, that I'm sure my parents would probably be very strongly recommending, and certainly yours as well, I suspect, is education. Education and training in being able to do a job. If you have a certain level of education and training, you will be able to access higher jobs, and that will enable you to generate more money. But the downside with this is that this is limited by the amount of time that you have in the day. If I am a computer programmer, I can only really plausibly work consistently perhaps 8 hours a day. Whereas if you were to, say, create a product that was generated through an automated system or a system that abstracts the human being away as much as possible, then you can make this money without a time barrier to it. However, the thing that people often don't mention is that this has a very high rate of failure. This is a high risk thing to do, because what I'm essentially describing is creating your own business, and 9 out of 10 times these fail. Whereas getting a job, you will get the money regardless. So it's worth considering this. Another thing as well is perhaps having certain material wealth that can be rented out. So for instance, you might own a tractor. Certain farmers around you might need that tractor and they'll be able to pay you a certain rate for it. In any case, my point is that it's important to not think in the abstraction of numbers when it comes to money, but rather to focus on what the money can buy. Thanks very much for watching.